Hello, family. Welcome to the Agile Couple podcast. We've got a special episode we're going to do today that we thought we'd just tell you the story of our business, like the precursor to the Agile Couple is our business of IQ Solutions. And we own some other businesses as well, but our main company we kind of wanted to talk about. So we're calling this episode From Vision to Value, How IQ Solutions Found Its Way. And actually, even before I get into the first question, IQ Solutions is IKUW, and that even by itself comes from something kind of interesting and spiritual for us. So Kevin, explain what, because we pronounce it IQ. When people see it, they have a hard time understanding what it is.
IKUW Solutions.
Yeah. So the IQ, they don't know how to say it. What is the IQ? Where did we get that?
Yeah, so it's definitely a God-inspired thing. It was actually based on a sermon that we had attended, and our pastor, he was talking about in Proverbs, he was talking about God's knowledge and understanding and wisdom. And because we live in the information age, we added the I to the beginning of that. And what IQ stands for is the transformation of information into knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And when you think about what our genesis is as far as a learning and a training company, learning is really that process as well, right? And, you know, the information, we live in this society now where everything is inundated and you have very little silence, you know, whether it's the TV, the internet, social media, radio, what have you. And really what all of that is it's just noise. That's the information that's out there. And really what our goal is, and has always been, is to be able to take that information. So it's the transformation of information into knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. So the information in and of itself, you need to be able to analyze, you need to be able to synthesize that. And when you do that, then you gain knowledge. And with that greater knowledge, you have a better understanding of whatever you're dealing with, and then with that greater understanding, you're able to make wiser decisions.
Yeah.
So it really was something that was divinely inspired, and everybody always, it's like, oh, IKUW Solutions, and finally we kind of get to the point. It's like, yep, that's what it is. But it does have a very, you know, it has a much deeper meaning, you know, for us, and it really represents. As Leanne had pointed out, we pronounce it IQ, like intellectual quotient. So the whole thing with the learning, it's like we couldn't come up on that on our own. That was definitely something that was, you know, a divine inspiration. It's my cousin Crystal. Surprise, surprise. The local entrepreneur.
Well, so the Agile Couple, right? This is our first year of having the podcast, but we've had, actually, I don't know that we ever talked about having a podcast, but we definitely talked about doing different things. Yeah. And so we've got all of these different connections and all of these different experiences and different business experience even. So we're going to have a lot of different interviews coming this year. Actually in the next few weeks even. And it's kind of exciting because you're going to hear from way more people than just us, all over the world in totally different disciplines and just their journeys and sharing some stuff. And so we thought, well, maybe we should start with explaining who we are, like where we got started. We're not new to this business, but we started IQ Solutions kind of interestingly. Probably not the best time to start a business. You only know that after the fact, but we lived in the state of Montana, which at that point had maybe around 1 million people. I mean, the joke in Montana is there's way more cows and sheep than there are people. Still true. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. So that by itself was a little bit of a challenge, but we were like, we saw the need, right? So we'll talk about the need in a second, but we decided to do this. I was pregnant with our youngest. And wanted to figure out a way that I could maybe not be going to the office all the time and do this together. And there was other business needs that we saw, but it was the end of 2007 and we kind of started the business, but officially started later in 2008. I think officially like around August of 2008.
Yep.
And then about 6 months later, we found out we were officially in the recession.
Yeah, right around that end of 2008, there was rumors and there was kind of some whispers of, a recession coming, not realizing it was going to be the Great Recession.
Right.
And at that point, I was actually an engineering manager for a fintech there in Bozeman. And it's like, hey, why not? Let's put all of our eggs in one basket. I left my job. We cashed out our 401k.
We did everything wrong, actually. Now,
in order to seed that first computer lab, and tell them about the when we finally got the lab set up. What did we do?
Oh my God! Well, we actually had a really beautiful location.
Oh, it was amazing.
There was so much learning in that. Even in small communities, people have, I don't know, a resistance to traveling any portion out of the main city that we didn't understand. So we lived in a little suburb, but it was beautiful. We were on this little lake. It was a great location. Like I would love to have that location now. And again, we paid cash for everything and didn't understand cash flow and the importance of that. Didn't know we were going to hit a recession on top of that. But I do remember that we put it all together. We actually had friends and family and our church and all sorts of people came to help us with our open house. It was very exciting. And then I think like the official day that we were ready to start, we went to work and we were all excited and we're looking around our beautiful training lab and I'm looking out over the lake and I looked at Kevin and I go, so when do they show up?
Now what?
Now what happens? Yeah. Well, we didn't really understand the whole, how do you meet customers type of thing. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It was eye-opening. So we started figuring out how to go out and I think we started at like the local library.
We did.
And,
we did.
It was like, where do we get started? We joined the chamber and started to meet people and we knew there was a need because we'd had business experience. I came from the HR world, right, in operations, and you were in leadership from a technical perspective. And we both were dealing with people needed to get upskilled. They needed training. They needed to increase their capacity and their learning. And we knew how much we were spending just in our businesses, but also the cost of it because we didn't have people locally.
Right.
The cost to bring people in for these things. That we're like, surely there's a better way. And thankfully we lived in Bozeman at the time, which is kind of like a tech hub, right? Yeah. I mean, there was a company called Right Now Technologies, which the current governor of Montana, Greg Gianforte, owned that was later sold to Oracle. So, and there were many other, you work for a fintech there that's, globally known and has been established for many years. I don't know, 30 years or 20 some years. Yeah. Many companies there. So, and you started with a company called EDS, the Ross Perot days. So that was like a special little hub that was there that was all technical. So there's businesses that are there that people probably don't know. And we were kind of in the right situation, but just learning, it's like, if I build it, they will come. It doesn't quite work exactly like that.
It was not a Kevin Costner type of moment that we came to, but.
Yeah. So I was thinking about how we started out with our first customers, and it was very much onesie, twosie, not scalable by any means. In fact, you were remembering that it was a parent or parents of somebody you had worked with, right?
Yeah. I can't remember their name, but I worked with their son at Zoot, and then they had come in, and he was like working as a salesman or something.
Yeah.
And he was trying to, and he was probably
it happened with Excel or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, it was like in his 60s, and he was trying to figure all this stuff out. And that was our first customer.
Yeah.
And we were really excited. If we got twosies, it was like, that was amazing as opposed to the onesies.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's exhausting. I do remember, and actually I remember us with the first actual dollar, because I think you kept that and framed it,
I did.
Right? When we had that. So it's kind of interesting because we like to tell the story about the recession hitting, and I think I was saying like Bozeman in particular, but lots of places then, it was booming from a real estate perspective. There were construction workers everywhere. I mean, there was so much building going on. And then it came to an abrupt end very fast. And just everybody in the valley was out of work.
Yeah.
And so while we were trying to spin up our business, and we started working with like the job service and some of the state agencies with people who were, I mean, I remember dealing with people with head traumas,
Yeah.
and they were like trying to get back into work. And I'm like, that's a really good way to learn. Like, how am I going to teach somebody who's just relearning how to talk
Yeah.
and some of these things? I mean, it was interesting and challenging. But we ended up having people who had been in construction, and they were like, well, what am I going to do now?
Right.
And I don't even remember how that came about, if we had met them or somebody sent them to us, but we didn't really get paid. And so we always would joke and say, we're like the wedding planner, wedding singer. Sorry, not the wedding planner, wrong movie. Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler, and the cute little old lady, he was teaching her to sing the song for her husband, and she would come up and pay him with meatballs and say, I just want to see I eat it, right? And Kevin and I would joke about how many meatballs did we get paid today.
It was very, very slim. And looking back on it, it's I don't know how we got through it.
Well, God is the reason, is the only way we got through it.
It really was. I mean, we had a very good church family at that point. There was a lot of support there, just even from a prayer standpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting time, because we started in 2008. I had left my job, and things were, continuing on. We ended up picking up some employees.
We did.
And oftentimes it was people that we either knew from church, or the kids, another parent of one of our kids' friends worked with us as well. And
we had expanded, actually. So we did. So this was 2008. First couple years were pretty slow. Yeah, I don't know now. It's like, maybe it's kind of like childbirth, and that you don't remember the pain of some of the stuff, right? Mm. I mean, I definitely remember some pain that we'll talk about, but I couldn't tell you how we actually made it through. We did actually find a really cool client that was there, that is a marketing company that brings in, is it the Marlboro?
Yeah.
And there was this really cool 5-star getaway that anybody who
like a ranch.
And we went up there, and their staff, we did a lot of training with them. And that was kind of a cool experience.
A lot of Microsoft Office stuff.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. I spent a lot of time teaching Microsoft
Yes,
Office and computer basics. Yep. We did a lot, like legit old, huge computer pieces, and explaining all of that. We've got a clip from the local paper with this giant old school computer hard drive. Yeah. But then we decided to expand, and we were trying to figure out, how do we actually get into proper business, right? This is nice, and we like to do a good thing and to help people, but we are not going to survive this way. And so we ended up actually expanding into the state capital in Helena. And you know what? We never had money for marketing. And for anybody who doesn't live in Montana or in the West, you might live in California or some of these other places where you're traveling, and you might take an hour and a half to go to work, and you're going 5 miles. We were traveling an hour and a half to work, going 150 miles, whatever, one way. So we were driving to our other location twice a day in the middle of winter, watching for elk on the road and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that's where our business took off. But we had to prove ourselves. So we did a lot of investment in going and meeting and getting clients and finding what their needs were with state agencies. And really, I feel like we kind of had the first real class, and it may have been a Java class or something that you did. Do you recall what the first one was?
The first one, I think, was actually an Agile.
Oh, was it?
Class, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like
3 people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I remember because it was 2 of them were from ITSD, and the other one was from Department of Revenue. And after the 2-day, the manager came up. He's like, how quickly could you run my whole team through this?
Yeah.
And then that just kind of opened up a whole series of doors for us. And I think, when we moved into the Helena market as well, it's like you mentioned, we had to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's something that, we've been very cognizant of, over the years is, and even like we just got back from Scotland, and I told the engineers, I always give them a little bit of sage advice.
Yeah.
And I told them, it doesn't matter what your skills are. The most important thing that's going to lead to your success is the quality of your relationships.
Yeah.
And, when we were in Helena, we actually had, our informal sales was just word of mouth. People's like, hey, they did a really good job for me, and they'd pass it on to somebody else. And all of a sudden, we've got, a lot of the agencies that we're working with. And we had some conversations with some of the bigger agencies as well, because there's always going to be some bad taste that's left in people's mouths based on the,
Prior
previous experience.
Yeah.
And we've always been just very upfront and honest. And we told them, it's like, listen, we're not perfect, but if we make a mistake, we will make it right.
Yeah.
And that is something that garnered that respect and that trust. And that's really, I think, what led to our success there. And it's just continued.
It's integrity,
yeah,
right?
it is.
So we had to make some hard decisions sometimes, or we obviously taught, right, these classes, but we ended up forging really great relationships with trainers all over.
Yeah.
One who we still work with today that we love, that lives in Atlanta, Georgia, that we brought him onto this other project we're working on. Once you find those key people and we could build that up, there's a total, credibility and respect and integrity that's there. And we had some that we brought in who did not do a good job. And I remember you having to go, you traveled
5 a.m.
Yes, to call the class. You
Yeah.
were like, yeah, this is not going to work.
Yeah, we had an instructor that was there to teach some Oracle, and the group itself, there was like 12 students in there. And the first day, it didn't go well. They were sitting there in front of them, still trying to set their
prepared, right?
system up. Yeah. And I spoke to the manager who we'd done previous work with and had a good relationship. And I said, hey, I know what needs to be done. I said, I'm heading over now. And I went and I met that instructor and said, you're done.
Yeah.
Put him on the plane and sent him away. And we said, we'll figure this out. We'll get it rescheduled. We'll get
make it
somebody
right.
else in.
Yeah.
And, we were able to get somebody in that delivered, knocked it out of the park. And that really, increased that relationship. They became one of our largest clients, but,
because we could have kept, that's very expensive, right? So
Very
you got to
expensive.
respect the fact that people have a salary and they're missing their other work to be there
12
on
people
top
sitting
of
there.
the money that they paid to do it, on top of, it's like, so quality to us is the number one thing. So our reputation, the credibility, the quality, that's all you have.
It is all you have.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially for smaller businesses, when you're first starting out, that reputation is king. So I think that's one of our pieces of advice is protect that reputation, maintain your integrity, admit your mistakes. You have to have that intellectual humility. You're not perfect.
Right.
None of us are perfect.
Something is going to go wrong.
It is.
Whether you have control of it or not.
Right.
So,
and it comes down to how do you respond, to those situations. And once again, I think that's what led to some really strong relationships that we stay in touch with, some of those people to this day.
Yeah.
And, it's very, very, important that trust aspect. And, if you say something, the integrity is, if you say it, you do it.
Right. Well, and even we learned a lot about partnering with other people because we ended up having a really good partnership with a company that focused on VMware back in the day, which was a huge thing,
great.
which was highly technical. There was a lot to it. And we kind of dated some other people, if you will. And it was like, not all partnerships are the same.
Right.
So you'll learn a lot through that. So I think part of what we wanted to talk about is like, when you hear somebody that owns businesses or is a business owner, the understanding or the perception that some people have is that they're just raking in the money and, you're just like out there just, maybe at some point, but maybe never at some point. But it also, you don't understand what people behind the scenes are putting into to make a business run. So, and our kids, we still talk about it today. Our kids kind of felt like orphaned a little bit because we spent so much time. It wasn't just the delivery or the sales and meeting with the people. It was, we did it the hardest possible way. We would
Setting the labs up.
we were a Microsoft certified partner, like learning partner, which was very expensive. And they had very particular labs you'd have to set up. And this was before we had cloud, where we could have spun these up that way. It was entire full weekends of us setting up just to get ready for a class.
Yeah.
And there was one class, if you recall, we lived in the state of Montana. We had Best Buy. Like that was it, right? And we had a whole lab. And then we found out if we went to go set this class up, I don't remember if it was a SharePoint, some certified.
It was a VMware. No, actually,
No,
it was
it
a
was Microsoft, yeah.
But it required like hyper threading or something
Yes.
within the computers, and the computers that
Didn't
we
have
had
didn't have it.
didn't have it. So then it's on the phone, Best Buy. So we're in Helena.
We drove to
doesn't-
Missoula, I think.
Helena
to
doesn't
pick it
have
up.
a Best Buy, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up driving to Missoula, picked up 5 computers
Yeah.
that night, came back. I mean, it was
Very
I
stressful.
look back on those days, and it's like that aged us.
Yes, it
just
did.
Just the stress.
And the money, like it's like the whole cash flow thing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to start a business, go and watch some Udemy classes,
Yeah.
go talk to some people who actually have experience with business and understand cash flow.
Yeah.
We didn't understand cash flow.
But we understand it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's also very hard to have cash flow when you don't have any cash.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you know, now we can look back and kind of laugh. It was very good and we were very blessed. And then it became very scary all at once again too. So we actually had, I feel like for whatever reason, 2012 for us became, was it 2012 or 2011, maybe where we were kind of having the repercussions from the recession. It was years later. It was kind of delayed.
That's when the housing market was really bad. You had people, I mean, a lot of foreclosures, all
Yes.
this. So it was right around that, right in that 2011 period of time. And at this point, we had 2 operations. We had one that was actually in Bozeman because we'd moved out of our Belgrade office into Bozeman. And then we'd also expanded into Helena. So we had two locations.
Only one was making money.
And yeah, the Helena one was the one that was making the money. And at that point we had 3 employees. And at that point we had 4 kids. We had 2 dogs, I think. And
Well, I learned during that time that when people start losing their jobs, so when people are being riffed, right, there's a reduction in force or what the businesses were, people were losing their businesses, right?
Yeah.
If you guys remember all of that, they're losing their houses. It was everywhere. It was pervasive.
devastating.
It was devastating. Now there were certain people who had maybe worked for the government or you had certain types of jobs you were not affected, but certain
Not in the same
industries
way,
were
yeah.
so horribly affected. And I learned that one of the first things to go in that type of thing, there's 2 areas to me, which was a training budget and a marketing budget. So marketing companies were also feeling this. It was like what might have been doing really well and kind of lucrative and had a purpose just came to a full-on stop and there was no more money.
yeah, if you, I mean, all the businesses that were closing, it's like if you don't have any business, you don't have a need for the marketing side. But yeah, I mean, during that time is when, we had employees and, on the back end of, it's the behind the scenes that we talked about. It's kind of like that analogy that's always used with the duck on the top of the water. It looks so smooth, but they're just like, paddling like crazy
Yes.
underneath. That's a small business owner's life.
Yes.
And it's 24/7. I mean, you never get
You
out
don't
of
sleep.
that. No.
You eat like crap.
Yeah.
You're worried about the next thing coming in, or you're dealing with employees, or you're dealing with taxes, or it's never ending insurance, or I didn't know I had to have whatever. I mean,
Right.
there is no great way to start a business. I don't think still that says, here's a workshop.
Yeah.
We're going to teach you what, and we've even learned this in our newer business that, we're doing very well in with another partner. When you build your operation agreement, and I remember your cousin talking through this at the time, you need to have a great exit strategy,
Yeah.
but it also needs to be specific about how things are going to work.
Right.
Ooh, that has saved our bacon.
Yeah.
Some that, we didn't always have that experience and you get stuck in situations that you did not see coming. And
Yeah.
people don't talk about this stuff, I feel like. So, and it can hit you with the best intentions. Both parties might have best intentions, but there's not a meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
And things are going to go south.
Well, what was there's a term for businesses, I mean, you talk about fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Blow
fishing.
fishing,
Yeah.
right? You make yourself look bigger than
Yeah.
you actually are. And all of those things, they can be very painful.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing of it is, we've got the benefit now of being able to have that hindsight and look back on it. And there were some very, very struggling times. We had every one of our employees, they always had a paycheck. They never missed a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that on the back end of things, we almost lost our house.
Well, we weren't paying ourselves. Yeah.
We weren't paying ourselves. We are taking care of our employees, and that's where it's only through our faith in God that really carried us through that. And, the
Your
kids,
parents also did loan us a very small amount of money, but it was a saving thing.
they
at
took
one-
a loan out.
I don't
for
remember
us.
how
Yeah.
was it. Maybe it was. I don't remember how much it was.
Oh, it was like 40 grand.
Oh, was it that much? Okay, it wasn't a little amount. It was.
Yeah. No. And
That's
and
probably actually. I think I've
it may have actually been 60 grand.
because they refinanced their home,
They did.
Yeah.
Because we'd
which
gone.
they had retired.
Yeah, because we'd gone to banks, and in Montana, the banks they can make $1 million loans for buying farm equipment, but
Right.
when it comes down to a technical training company,
We
they don't
were
know.
we were such a foreign alien. They had no idea how to even relate to what. Think about the time we're talking about, and we're talking about technology and learning world. It's all in our brains.
in Montana, a
Yeah.
rural state.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
where you got 1 million people, and then you look at the people who actually could use our service. It was a very small
Yeah.
market, right? But that, and Leanne and I, we talk about this as well, because we look back on it, and there were days where it was literally so depressing that we didn't even want to get out of bed. We didn't want to answer email. We didn't want to answer the phone.
We also
didn't
got
want
really
to see
fat.
anybody. Yeah,
Really, really fat.
our health went downhill. It was
Yeah.
miserable, and but once again, with the benefit of hindsight, we look back on that, and it's like, in the absence of going through that tough time, we wouldn't have learned what we know today. And it really changed the way that we approached relationships, partnerships, how we manage our finances, and how we plan. And like I said, in the absence of going through that, we wouldn't be at where we're at today.
I think there was also a faith walk because I was pretty new. I definitely was new to the Christian understanding and Christian life, and trying to figure out what that meant in my life. Like, you had been down that path for a long time, and I was new to it, and I was like, to trust you, but trying to trust and trying to have faith and understand this. And I can't remember the specific time, but it happened more than once. But I do remember not having any money, and I panic over money a little bit because I was pretty much risk averse, right? I'm like, I need to have
Yeah.
the 9-to-5 full-time job, we need the benefits of that.
Because safety is always in
Yes.
other companies.
And that was the other thing is that messed with our world, was understanding there is no, people were losing their jobs that had done everything right.
Right.
So they weren't in any better boat actually than we were with our own business. But I remember more than once that we would open the mail, and I'm literally like, I don't know how we're going to get through the next week.
Yep.
And there would be a check for around the amount that we would need to just clear.
Yep.
That happened a few times.
It happened, quite
Like a
quite
surprise
frequently.
insurance something, or just things that we didn't know were coming.
Yeah,
Or somebody owed us money from months ago,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it showed up.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then we, had somebody else on the other end that we owed money to, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, here.
We
right
had it
hand,
for a
be left
minute,
hand.
but
We had
yeah.
it for a minute, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting, interesting time that we had gone through, during that. And then we moved from Belgrade, and then we moved up to Missoula. So we shut the Belgrade Bozeman.
Because we wanted to be around family.
Yeah.
We were going to be closer
Yeah,
to
we're going
family.
to be close to the family. And so we moved up to Missoula. So now we had a training center in Missoula, and we still had Helena. So rather than going from Belgrade to Helena, which was like 115 miles, now we were going from Missoula to Helena for work and going over McDonald Pass, which is always fun. Montana in the winter, going over an icy pass with people that don't know how to drive on the snow. But once again, it was a great, learning opportunity.
And we moved our business in Helena probably 5 times.
Oh, it was more than that.
Was it more than
Oh
that?
my gosh, yes.
We've literally dated more locations in Helena than probably
Yeah.
any other business. There was one location we were at where I think we must have had it on the, for some reason, you and I 2 different times stayed the night
Oh yeah, yeah.
in our, not together. I did one and you did one, and then we had to figure out,
Well,
go to a gym so that we could shower
Right.
and, yeah.
Yeah, we did that because it's like, okay, it's 6:00, it's snowing out, it's like a blizzard. Are we gonna, go back to Missoula and then be able to turn around in 10 hours and come back and do
Right.
that drive again? So yeah, there were nights that we slept in the office, which is kind of cool, kind of creepy, but
Not very fun by yourself though.
not
I would
really.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but those are the things that you did to get through it.
I feel like, so we're sharing this. If you're listening to this, you're probably like, why are they telling us all their sordid laundry? But I feel like that would have been inspirational for me to have heard that it's not all rosy. Everything doesn't always work out. And actually, we actually didn't fail. So we look at this when we explain to people and we tell people, yeah, like we're from Montana. We live in Boise, Idaho now. But we used to say born and raised, fourth generation, fifth generation Montanan. And we had friends from Ohio that lived with us in Bozeman. And they finally said, do you guys understand how offensive that is? Like, when is somebody else going to be accepted? I think it's kind of a Western rural thing where people do that, because I've heard people do it here in Idaho as well. And we went, oh, you're right. Like, you're never part of the group, right? It's like you can have people that have lived there for 25 years. Yeah, you're still an outsider. Like, you're never, unless you're born here, right? So that was awakening too. There's another thing that we learned, because it was in 2015 when we moved to Missoula that we first did this project that we've been involved with for 10 years. And we've done a lot of other things, but this project was kind of monumental. And it allowed, for me, it was like the validation of, we are enough. We do know that we do have value. We do know these things because we also fought. And so anybody who lives in a rural America, I want you to kind of listen to this, because I don't think it's just Montana. I termed this thing ruralism. So there is such a thing as fighting sexism or fighting ageism. Ruralism is also a real thing. And so what we found is that while we knew I was traveling all over the country dealing with the top big 100 companies, talking with C-suite people, doing major deals for Microsoft on behalf of Microsoft. I never got any royalty or any kickback, but it was such a great experience. But I'm like, I can live in this world. I understand what I'm talking about. I am being helpful, right? Yeah. I'm like helping solve their problems. I'm learning so much along the way. And then we did this other big project for a large financial organization. And it was a great experience. And we did really well at it. We started to have validation in this. And then we would go and we would meet with people in the state where we live. And they'd be like, that's a great idea. They'd steal our idea. And then they'd be like, we got to go find somebody from Chicago, or we got to go find somebody from LA, because people from here don't know.
Right.
That happened so often that I literally got tired of it. Mm-hmm. So we almost were going to put on our website that we were based in other cities just so that ruralism wouldn't be a thing. Yeah. So anybody who's listening who lives in a smaller rural town, I don't know why that's a thing. I would go to the chamber and I'm a member and they all loved my ideas, but nobody wanted to do business with us. They would go, oh yeah, we do need that. Let's go do a search and find somebody.
Yeah.
I'm right here, right? But we could go and travel globally and be in the top echelon with the other people. And yes, we actually do know what we're talking about.
Right.
So that's a thing that I don't understand what that's about. It's a little bit like the crabs keeping the crabs down in the pot type of story, but I'd like to break that mold. That would be something that I'd like. Maybe that's part of the podcast, is like, if you're in a decision-making mode, give somebody a chance. It doesn't really matter where they live. That doesn't mean that they can or cannot bring value.
Right. Well, and especially today, I think, you look back even 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. I mean, the technology has allowed so much opportunity.
Yes.
You get Starlink, you could be working, and I literally have had people that they're out camping and they're attending a Zoom call, via Starlink. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't matter. The geography, doesn't play a role anymore. And honestly, the popularity of these Western states like Idaho and Montana, where there's been a big influx, is you have people that are coming from the
Silicon Valley,
the big, the big, urban areas where they're like tired of the rat race. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're able to still work in technology and be able to be in an environment, where you look out and it's like, there's an inspiration, there's a natural beauty there that you can't get in the city. Yeah. And it's like the best of both worlds.
It used to be less expensive. That's not the case anymore.
It's not. I mean, it's changed, but.
So I had on here, so how did word of mouth work? You had kind of talked about it, but that is all we had for marketing. And now, so it's like, there's something to be proud of with that. So if you're running your own business, or there's kind of like, you run your own business and then how do you explain that quadrant of like, you're going to go be an employee or you're going to be.
Yeah, it's from Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yeah. What are the quadrants though?
So you've got employees, meaning you're working for somebody else, and then there's self-employed, which is you're still working in your business, and then you can move over to the other side, and you're going to be a business owner. So rather than working in the business, you're working on your business. You're hiring people, and you're putting systems in place. You're being able to build something that's scalable, and then there's the investing quadrant, and that evolution. And I discovered this book probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was like, late 40s, early 50s. So now, when we have graduations that come across and we get the announcements, they get the 3, books from Robert Kiyosaki. We give them a silver dollar, like an American Silver Eagle with their graduation year, and then give them, like $50 or whatever, and say, okay, this is fiat. This is real money.
Yeah.
Read these books. Because if somebody would have done that for me when I was 18 years old and had that benefit of having that foundational knowledge then versus when I discovered it, midlife, you can literally change, the trajectory of your life.
It's part of the IQ.
It is.
thing,
It's
right?
the knowledge. And I was meeting with our financial advisor today, and we were talking about it, and it's like, each one of us has a passion for being able to educate.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, it's like the person that is responsible for your education throughout life is you.
Yeah.
It's nobody else. It's not your teachers. It's not your parents. You have to have that internal drive. And with a world that's changing so quickly and the technology and the advancements and such, it's like there is no end to your learning. You have to be a continual learner regardless of what your current vocation is.
It doesn't even matter. Yeah. I mean, we're in technology, but it's anything.
Yeah.
Well, I was having you explain the quadrants because we've got the note about we did everything with word of mouth, as you had already explained.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like right now, you could be on social media. You can figure out all these ways to promote. And I got a lot of learning to do in some of the newer ways of doing it. But to me, the word of mouth, we always agreed and just knew that we don't want to be transactional.
Right.
So for us, the word of mouth, we were intentional about building relationships and helping them solve problems.
Yep.
The money figures itself out.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come back to that just to kind of say, if you're starting out or you're stuck or you're having a hard time, because I also remember both you and I had a moment where I personally felt like I can't do sales because I just think of the slimy salesman. I don't like being overpressured. I don't like being bugged. I don't like all those things. I don't want to do that to somebody. And there was one moment where you had to go. I don't remember what the situation was, but you were like, I guess it's going to be me.
Yeah, because
right?
it literally is one of those things, because it's the same thing. It's like there's a perception out there when you talk about sales. Mm-hmm. And I literally one night woke up, it was like 3:30 in the morning, and it was like an epiphany. It was kind of a God thing again. It's like I realized,
he's like, thunk, thunk, thunk.
yeah, it's like I may not be good at sales, but I'm really good at helping people solve problems. And when I made that mental switch to I'm going to help them solve problems, which the first thing you need to do is you need to understand what is their problem.
Yeah.
So
you got to listen.
It's the why did God give us 2 ears and 1 mouth? It's because we need to listen. And I think that's one of the things that, if you're promoting yourself or you're trying to, build a business, the most important characteristic from a communication standpoint is you need to be a good listener. You need to be able to understand, what their problem is, and then you can start bringing a solution to the table. And sometimes you may find that your solution doesn't meet that.
Right.
Right. And
or
that's okay.
What they think the problem isn't actually the problem, which is more listening and more probing and more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. That takes technique though. It takes
technique, it takes experience, it takes, failing.
Yeah.
But it's the acronym for FAIL, first attempt in learning.
Right. Yeah.
And if you put that in that context, that you need to be, and I've like with software development teams, I've always coached them. It's like, if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not going outside of that comfort zone, because the greatest opportunities are when you fail and making mistakes. And you've got
fail
something,
early, fail often, and celebrate the failure.
Yeah,
Share that failure.
You've got that, when you're working with, some of these cohorts that we work with, you are fantastic at that because you're like in the middle of the room and somebody just made a mistake and you're like, hey, stand up, tell everybody.
Oh, it's mortifying.
Yeah.
They hate it. They actually, I think, begin to kind of appreciate it. But at the beginning, it is like,
well, it's getting them out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're normalizing that failure and making mistakes. That's just human nature.
well, why are you going to keep that to yourself?
Right.
Now, this doesn't apply with your kids as parents. It doesn't matter what you tell them to try and keep them to not fail. That doesn't apply for whatever reason. But when you are with a group of people and you're in a work setting, it is good. But you have to normalize that. Like, let's learn from what we just did. We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And if we aren't, right, that's actually a bigger problem if you're not.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've talked about before is like with modeling behavior. And I think one of the key things is, when you're asking people to step out of that comfort zone and to recognize those failures and celebrate those failures because you're learning, that also comes down to who we are as individuals. We need to be able to share our failures as well. And I think that's part of the reason we're probably doing this particular episode today is our life has not been perfect. We've made a lot of mistakes, but a lot of companies, I think it's like at some ridiculous amount. It's like 90% of small businesses don't make it past 5 years. And
It's sad.
we're on year 18. So, when you're operating a business in that first 5 years, it's an entirely different experience than when you're at our position at 18. And I think one of the main pieces of advice that I would like to give people that are in that small business or you're starting something new is you need to have that perseverance. You need to be able to give yourself grace when you fail, and you need to be able to, once again, rely on your faith and surround yourself with people that believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you find people that are always negative and they're like, I don't understand what you're doing, why don't you just go get a job? Those are the people that, as you grow, it's like the person that I was 15 years ago no longer exists.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to, surround yourself with people that are encouraging, that are supportive, that are willing to tell you that you got the warts on your face, and be able to do it in a very loving, constructive way. So I personally have got the benefit of working with, Leanne. I'm going to get emotional. And, we always maintain our professionalism when we're on site, especially when we're working together. And about 10 years ago when we were working on this project, we were both on the same floor. We were on different sides, and this was like a 6-week project. And it literally took the engineers and the analysts.
Weeks.
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks before they put it together. And it's like, hey, are you guys related?
You have the same last name.
Yeah, it's like, but we interact with each other, on a regular basis. And I always introduce Leanne as this is my wife and then my business partner, right? And
well, we also now make sure to say we are not siblings.
we are
that's
not brother and sister,
right? Yeah.
But I think those are the things because I've been able to grow so much during this process, and a lot of it has been due to you. Just
it's not always easy. It's hard.
It's not easy, and but it's a matter of being able to, in any type of relationship, like I said, it comes down to the quality of it, and part of that quality is you have to be honest with each other, even when it hurts.
Yeah.
But that pain allows you to grow, and it allows you to grow closer. So, I look at where we were, 21 years ago when
there
we
was a
first
point
met.
where we just pulled the sheets up and we were like, I can't leave this bed.
Yeah, it's like we're not going to deal with it, but we're in it together, and that's what's allowed us to, see the success that we have today, and it's I always have so much fun too because we take all of our, anytime we're on the plane, it's like we're going to post up to Facebook. It's like, okay, we're off to another journey. And it was really cool this last go around when we went to Glasgow because we were able to, I was working, but then Leanne came along, and then we were able to bring our youngest son, Christian, with us.
Well, we
as
did our podcast there.
We did the podcast.
Great.
Yeah, we got our Scotland edition of the Agile Couple coming up. But it was really cool, the opportunities that God's provided for us to be able to travel. And our kids, our 3 older kids, they went through the early stages of a business where it's very sketchy, and it's like we don't know. I mean, mom and dad are not necessarily in their right mind a lot of times, and a lot of time that we spend away from them. And now, we are at the point where we've got 3 of our kids working for us. And hopefully it's something that from a legacy standpoint, when we're no longer, willing or able to do it, that it's something that we can carry on, that they can carry on for us. So yeah, it's, I mean, I wouldn't change anything. Everything that we went through, both positively and negatively, I mean, it's led to who we are today.
Well, and those things that you go through, it is true. The trials and stuff prepare you for something else harder.
Absolutely.
That's coming that you don't even know yet. That's not on your purview.
Yeah, that's a perfect point, because it's like when you go through those, when you're faced with something challenging, you do have a choice. You can either ignore it, knowing that God's faithful and He's going to put you in that position again, or you can recognize that this is for my benefit. This pain that I'm going through, this struggle that I'm going through,
This too will end.
Yeah, and it is preparing you for something that's going to require you to be stronger in the future.
Yeah.
And I think the sooner that people recognize that those struggles are not a curse, it's a blessing, the easier it's going to allow you to move through those more quickly, and you'll find that your life, expands in ways that you couldn't even imagine.
Well, the other thing I was thinking, because you did step away from the business. You have to look at your surroundings and look at your scenario and look at your current reality and the external environment and all that stuff. And we literally did pray for a particular opportunity. It's going to either be option A or option B. And we said, Lord, hit us upside the head with a 2x4. Make it so obvious that we are not confused by this.
Yeah.
And we actually got an answer. It was like the door shut, the other door opened, and we went, I guess we're moving to Boise, and he's going to go take this job.
Yep.
And then what happens? 4 years later, 5 years later, and similar opportunity comes back around. You were able to leave that job and came back in, and we were able to do the thing that we originally were hoping to have as that opportunity. And the reality of it is, we would have not been successful the first time around. We were not ready. We did not have what we needed at that point to do it.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point, because when we left in 2017 and that door was, one door closed, another door opened, and then it was 6.5 years.
Oh, was it?
6.5 years from, when we had that opportunity and that door shut. And then that same client came back around 6.5 years later, and they're like, hey, we want to rewrite this program, which is the same thing that I put a proposal in, 6.5 years ago, just to see that full circle. And it's like, okay, that's
God's timing was right.
It was right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Much
and
more prepared.
we had a team.
We did.
Which we didn't have in place before.
Yep.
And yeah. So, okay. So what would you share? What have you learned about being a business owner? What would you share with others? If you could just concisely share something there.
Yeah, I think, for business owners, there's a reason that you get into business, right? And, for me, it was a matter of, I always knew I was going to be a teacher, but my plan was I was going to go through my technology career, get into my 50s, leave that, and I go back and teach high school math or history. And then,
which I could still totally see you doing.
We could. But then God intervened about 20 years prior and said, nope, that's not my plan. You're going to be a teacher, but it's going to be in your vocation. It's going to be in technology. So I think, just being able to be flexible and to be able to be open and also have that self-confidence, but also surround yourself with people who really
on the same trajectory.
Yeah, they're on the same trajectory. So, we had the benefit that we were married. So it's like, okay, that's something that we've got going for us. And, our relationship has been one of the strongest, parts of our success, not only from a business perspective, but also, just from a personal perspective. But you need to surround yourself with really positive people, put positive thoughts in your mind. And even in those times that, will drive you to your knees while you're down there, pray. And the guidance and that faith walk, if I were to look at our public education system, as soon as the kids come out of high school, they graduate, they need to run their own business for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Just to understand what
yeah.
it means to sign, the front of the check and not the back of the check. Because
Yeah.
there's so many costs that as an employee,
You have
I wasn't
no
aware
idea.
of.
You
Right.
have no idea.
And I
No.
think that is something that, we've talked about. How can we contribute? How can we give back? And I think both of us have been very fortunate. This is probably another episode, but we've both been very fortunate to have good mentors in our life. And now we're at that point where, we're not the ones that are looking to be mentored, although we're always going to be in that mode. But we definitely need to be looking at what's that next generation, behind us. How can we benefit them? And they're going through some shitty struggles.
It's
a
a hard time right now.
Yeah. I mean, look at the housing, 2020, the median house was 200 grand. Now it's over 400.
Well, and the salaries aren't really
Right. So
not
it's
on the
like
same
there's
trajectory,
something that needs to change. And the one thing that I would, throw out there as well is, do not lose hope. There is never anything that is so overwhelming that you can't get through
It's
it.
just money at
It's
the
just
end of
money.
the day. It's just, in fact, even when we almost lost our house, I was the risk averse person, and not that I didn't have a hard time with it. I think we went through the whole pulling the sheets up over our head and went through all the trials and tribulations that many other people were going through at that time, being taken off course, given bad guidance on what we should do in this
Right.
scenario. I do remember finally just going, at the end of the day, it's just a house.
Right.
We have our health, we have our family, we have these things. We could move if we needed. We could go get regular jobs. There are other things we can do. So there is some of that too. Like, you shouldn't just force your business because you feel like you should force your business. Because sometimes that is the little knock from the Lord saying, I think you're not listening to me,
Right.
because I think that we maybe did have some of that, that we didn't listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very stubborn. And
I will admit to that one.
yeah. Really quick. So, you were talking about surround yourself with people. I want you to tell this story really quick. So your cousin, because we definitely have other people who are in business. In fact, I just did a Facebook post when I was in Scotland. I was kind of looking through pictures and thought, oh yeah, my grandpa was an entrepreneur, but I never thought of him as an entrepreneur. He owned his own logging company for decades, and the whole family kind of worked, right? And it was like, that was before I didn't even understand that's what it was, right? I didn't understand that was a choice that he did and all that. But then your cousins, you have a few cousins that are in their own business. But back when we were having a hard time with very little cash flow, tell that story really quick when you called your cousin Crystal.
Yeah. Yeah. So earlier when I looked at my phone, my cousin Crystal was calling, and Crystal and I, we talk like regularly a couple times a week, and we've done that for literally 20 years. And part of it is there's that common understanding because she's an entrepreneur, we're entrepreneurs, and we're constantly, just bouncing ideas off of her. But there was one time I was in Missoula. I remember we were in the Ponderosa Dental is where we had the other side of the dentist's office they leased out to us. And I remember so vividly, I was sitting in the chair, I was talking with Crystal, and I told her, I said, we've got 23 cents in our checking account right now. And she kind of chuckled and she goes, I've been there. She said, I understand. And, that is such a humbling experience where it's like, okay, we've got a lease that we have to pay the dentist for. We've got our home, we've got our kids, and we've got 23 cents in our checking. And it's so amazing, to be able to look back on that now and know that we were not doing that, alone. And there was a lesson in that. And it also makes for a really funny story now.
Now. It does. Yeah.
It was a little bit terrifying back then.
Well, that's good. So
let me ask you.
Oh, yeah.
What advice would you give to people that are just looking at either in the throes of starting a business or looking at starting a business? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I feel like a couple things. Number one, I know so many people who go into starting their own business because they have a love or a passion for something, and you don't understand that unless you come in with a lot of money right out of the gate where you can hire people, which is not the norm,
Right.
you have to do everything. Yeah, you're the president. You're also the one emptying the garbage. You're also the one,
You're cleaning the toilets.
you're
in
the
office.
accountant, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing all of those things. It's those things that you will learn so much through, you will be pained through, but you probably will lose sight of the passion of why you did it.
Yeah.
And so I just knowing that going into it, it may be the reality, but what's your plan? What do you need to do to get to a point where if like I should not be doing accounting, and I literally even back forever ago, 25 years ago, I was in accounting and I'm like, I am not somebody who should be in accounting.
Yeah.
Like, can I figure it out? Yes, but this is my working genius frustration
Right.
to sit here. But I can do it. You can make it through anything, but if it's going to suck the love and the intent out of why you're doing it and the joy that you should be getting from having your own business,
Yeah.
you need to have that plan, because that's the part nobody talks about too. Is that's the reality.
Right.
Unless you somehow have bootstrapped it and you have money or somebody's invested in you, even with that, money goes fast.
Yep.
So you need to have a plan for what is my role, what is outside of the scope of my role, and how am I, that's still a need. So what is my plan to get there, to get that covered?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing that I don't think we ever realized,
Yep.
right? Like sales for
Right.
us was like, we don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
We do. We just had to have a mind shift.
Yep.
What was my other point I was going to make?
I don't.
I'm a woman of a certain age and it's gone now. So
It'll come back.
it will come back. It'll come back when we're done. But also I think trusting yourself, right? So I think we also get in our own way. And I know for myself, but that's been the benefit of having you, where I'm not on a business by myself, that we're partnered together in it. But
Yeah.
I will say that has been helpful, because when I'm emotional and freaking out over something, you're usually calm.
Right.
And I wouldn't say you're ever freaking out, but you're in your weird space. And then I'm like, good. It does help to have somebody else with the offset of that. So if you're in that by yourself, just know that it's like you need to find somebody else
Right.
to help you in those times, because they're going to happen.
Yeah.
But need to get out of your own way and get out of your own head.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I think that's the other thing when you're stuck and you're dealing with all the things, right? You're like, money's not good. We just got this giant tax bill, or all those things that are happening. And for me, this has been a hard lesson, especially through COVID. You got to get out of your office. And there would be days upon weeks that I didn't leave even my office space, let alone the house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is not good for your mentality. It's not good for physically.
Right.
So even just that, like any forward momentum, what am I trying to say? Movement, right? Just getting out and getting some fresh air and taking a little walk. I'm like, that usually has helped my mindset, where the problems are still there, but I'm not quite in the dungeon like I was. Right?
Well, and that's actually, we can start wrapping it up, but that's a great segue into our upcoming interview with Cammie.
Yes,
She's got some very cool insights with regard to just being bored.
Yeah.
And I'm going to save that for hers, because she describes it so much better. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes you just need that downtime to kind of get yourself back to neutral.
Yeah. So actually, just speaking of that really quick, we've got some of these interviews coming up. So Camila Marquez is going to be one that we'll be posting soon. And you guys will love her. She's fantastic. She's one of my most favorite people. And then from our Scotland trip, we did a couple of interviews there
With our other favorite people.
with some of our other favorite people who happen to live in England, Europe, kind of depends. And we've got some more coming. So if you guys are looking for a particular area, because the Agile couple, while it's called the Agile, we're not just talking about, in fact, we don't even talk about Agile,
We
really.
haven't talked about Agile
Right?
much, yeah.
It's because it's part of our mindset. It's part of how we operate. And it's the people that we surround ourselves and work with. That's what we're trying to bring to you, is like a refreshing way, the truth, learnings, like different things that happen in real life. And some people have great perspectives. Cammie's got some perspectives of things where I wasn't even expecting the conversation to go the way it went. And I'm like, this is what people need. You need to hear lots of voices.
It's the authenticity as well.
Yeah. Yes. Authenticity. So we appreciate you sharing and kind of getting the word out. And we want to continue to have lots of other voices come in and join. And we're going to travel more places and get more visibility into different people, right? That are trying to live in this crazy world and share what they're learning and running business, and from the learning perspective to, just all sorts of things. So we're going to be interviewing another person named Susie who lives in the Agile coaching world, and hers is going to be a fantastic. We're going to have a conversation, I think, around leadership and some of that. So stay tuned. Those are coming, but we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us on the Agile Couple podcast. We try to record these sessions every week, and we don't want you to miss out on our awesome content. So make sure to like and subscribe. And we'd appreciate it if you would share this content with other people. We think it would be helpful to others. We're on all of the social media platforms from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Podbeam, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So any way that you're watching this, please be sure to leave us some feedback, give us some likes, and share the information. If you'd like to provide us with some other ideas of content you think might be helpful for us to cover, that would be great. Or if there's other people you think that might be really helpful for us to interview, we'd love to know some of that information. So you can email us at theagilecouple@gmail.com. And like always, we look forward to seeing you on the next session, the next episode, and hope to hear from you soon.